Hello and welcome to my course on AI automation powered by n8n. In today's lesson, we are going to talk about some of the tips relating to the optimization of your workflows, how you can make them faster, how you can make them performant, and how you can make them scalable. And like every lesson of this course, it is not going to be a theoretical lesson, it is going to be a practical implementation of an unoptimized workflow first, and then we will see how we can apply the tips shared in this particular video or lesson to make that unoptimized workflow in an optimized manner. So let's get started with the first tip of the optimization, that you must always strive to remove all the redundant nodes which are there in your workflow. You should always look out for those unnecessary nodes that can be removed from the workflow so that every redundant step is removed. And remember that node is an individual step in your automation workflow. So the less the number of nodes, the faster will be the workflow. Second tip is you should use parallel processing wherever possible. If the dependencies which are there in your workflow allows you to execute some of the tasks in parallel, you should always do that. You should never try to put them in sequential manner. For example, in this workflow, you can see that all the data is coming and inputted into a Google Sheet where someone is evaluating whether the lead is qualified or not. If the lead is qualified, based on that, 3 actions are being taken. One is Slack message, one is Notion, one is Airtable entry. But what is happening is all these 3 actions are being executed after this particular node. Whereas in this case, what you should have done ideally is you should delete this and put it over here. And because all 3 actions are required to be executed in parallel, maybe you can change the order of the branches, because remember the execution order follows left to right and top to bottom. So whatever sequence you had, you can basically put it as Slack at the top, then Notion, and then Airtable. So this would have been an ideal optimized configuration rather than having them sequentially in place. Third tip is you should minimize the number of API calls that you are making as much as possible. For example, if an API which is there that allows you to make some sort of a bulk API request, that you are uploading or updating a lot of records at once into that particular database or whatever that application is, then you should always try to use that bulk API and send more and more data in one request rather than calling that API for each and every item that the node executes. An example could easily be an Airtable batch API that you can use to update multiple records at once instead of updating one record at a time. And the fourth and final tip is you should always use merging and looping very smartly and very efficiently, because each redundant loop out there is going to hamper the time it takes to execute your workflow. So now let's get to the screen share and see some of these tips in action. Alright, I'm logged into the cloud instance of my n8n workspace, and today we are going to build a very simple workflow which is for customer feedback survey processing. And what I'm going to do first, I'm going to show you an unoptimized version of it, what the pitfalls are there, why it is unoptimized, and then we are going to see an optimized version of it. And I have already created these workflows this time, so we are not going to build it from scratch. You have had enough practice of building all the workflows from scratch while following this course. So now we are going to take a little different approach in some of the lessons. In some of the lessons, we'll still continue to follow that step-by-step process of dragging and dropping nodes, but in order to fast track some of the lessons in this course, I'm going to use pre-built workflows that I've already done. But don't worry, we are going to go into details of each and every step out there. So in this case, we are saying that in your business, every day you receive a batch of customer feedback entries. For each entry, you look up for a customer in your CRM, add a note to their record, send a thank you email to each customer, notify your support team if the rating is less than 3. So this is the step that we are doing, and let me just zoom out a bit, and you can see that at the top I have like this workflow which is more like an unoptimized, and at the bottom we have an optimized version of it, and we'll go into the details. So first thing is we are getting all the feedbacks which are out there, and for that I have used a Google Sheet. Let me open this up and execute this step. So it is going to get all the data or all the records which are there as feedbacks from various customers. You can see that the product is clay miniature set, gender is female, age is 24, it's John Swenson, very unique, well made, love the packaging. So this is basically the feedback out there. This is just a mock data. Now I'll go back you can see that there is this loop over items node. We have already gone through the details of how the looping works, what the loop over item nodes is. So it is going to execute the loop for all the 100 items, and we are going to fetch get customer records for each item in the loop. Then we have this update customer feedback. So for each item where record has been fetched, we are going to update the feedback in our Airtable. Then we have a send thank you email. So we are going to send a thank you email, and if the rating is less than 3, then we are going to alert our support team. Otherwise, if the rating is more than 3, then the loop continues to the next item, and the next item iterates over till all these 100 records of all the surveys that were requested has been processed fully. Let me execute that. So you will see that it has started executing. Now you see that for each and every record, all these nodes are getting executed, and you would see that for each 100 records, we are fetching get customer record. Then we are updating customer feedback. Then we are sending a thank you email. So that means 100 emails are going to be sent. And then we have an evaluation node, which is also going to execute 100 times. And finally, we have alert support team, which is going to execute 38 times, because I know that in this record set, there are 38 items which has a rating of less than 3. So that means how many executions are being done in this unoptimized workflow. So we have one execution of this. So second one is for this, and then from over here, this loop over item nodes, let's suppose it is only one because it's a loop which has started, so we'll consider it 1. Then we have 1, 2, 3 and 4. 4 of these are going to have 400 iterations, and then we have 38 of these. So 438 plus 3, which makes it 441 iteration. And while I'm explaining all this, the loop is still continuing on, going on and processing all these nodes one by one. So it is taking its own sweet time. So what I'll do is I'll just stop it right now. So it just stopped. So how can we optimize it? Let's come down and let me do one thing. Let me just delete this no operation do nothing node, like over here, and I'll delete this connection because I want to have a trigger for this workflow as well, and you can only have one manual trigger in the entire workflow. So I cannot connect this to multiple nodes, so that's why I have to connect it from the previous workflow, and now I can connect it to the new optimized version of it. So over here, firstly what we are doing is, now instead of fetching all the customer records and then updating them one by one, what I did was fetch all the feedback. So this is going to fetch all the feedbacks. It is same as what we did earlier. So we have fetched all the feedback. Now I'm going to get all the customers. So this node is going to execute once, right? So now I'm going to get all the customers which are there. So it executed. Now I'm going to merge both these records. So we have a merge node that match on the field named email. And if you found email in your Airtable record, and if you found email in the survey processing records, then merge both the records and give me one result set. So this is going to execute, and it is going to give me only one single data set. So you can see that now the customer record has been integrated with the feedback record or survey feedback record that we received as a separate data set. So both the customer and survey feedback has been joined together, and now you would see that 100 items are coming out of it. So in this 100 items, you can see that we have reduced this particular node which was getting one customer at a time and then updating. So this particular node, which is like update customer feedback, that is still over there, and it is going to execute one by one because I am not using the Airtable's bulk API, but you can use Airtable's bulk API over here and in fact reduce all these iteration to even single record. So all this data can be just sent to the bulk API of Airtable, and all these 100 iterations will go away. So our workflow will be much more faster in that case. But for the sake of simplicity in this workflow and a comparison vis-a-vis of the unoptimized one, I kept it as update customer feedback 1, which is going to execute 100 times, and this also is going to execute 100 times. Second one is sending a thank you email. You can't really do anything about it because you want to send a personalized thank you email to each and every customer. I can write some code, do some kind of manipulation, and maybe I can come up with an idea of sending just one email, but then there is a risk of exposing other customer emails to the other customer. So we need to think a little more about it, how we can optimize it. But straightforward, you can't really do much about it because you have to personalize the message for each and every customer. Then comes another part that you can optimize, which is more like sending an alert to the support team. So this time time we are sending 38 alerts because we found that there were 38 ratings which were less than 3. In this case, what I did is in the filter node, if I open it up, I have a rating less than 3. That's fine. This node is at the end going to give me 38 records, and then I have a code node which is run once for all items. And don't worry, in the next few lessons I'm going to cover code node in detail. Maybe next to next lesson is about code node only, and we are going to go into details of all the configuration which are there. But over here I have a simple code that is merging all the data that is being sent into one single string of record that I can send it using this alert support team. If you look at it, json.summary, so it is creating a summary of bad feedback alert, and it is sending just one notification to our customer service support channel. In this case, there were 38 different alerts that went in. However, in this case, only one single message will be sent out having the details of all 38. So for that, I have used a little bit of code node over here. So it is not essentially fully no code solution, but a low code kind of solution. However, we were able to optimize it. Now, if I run it, let me clear the execution first. Let me run this execution workflow and see what happens. So it is fetching all the records. You can see that it is now, updating customer feedback records. So first the topmost branch is executing. So it is updating one by one all the records, because remember, each node executes equal to the number of input items that are there. So it is executing right now 100 times because we have 100 items outputted from the merge branch. So it is going to take a little more time. Then it is going to come to the thank you email. So it is going to send 100 emails out there. And that's why if you are using a batch API of Airtable, it would drastically reduce the performance of this particular workflow, because there will be just one single request. It is going to update everything. Now it has moved on and started sending the emails as well to the customers. So 100 emails are right now being sent. My email inbox is being bombarded with all these emails, and the last one executed very quickly. So you can see that this particular workflow, even though had some sort of performance constraints while executing 100 items, however, the number of node executions now you count in this workflow has drastically reduced by almost 50%. If we start counting it, 1, 2, 3, and then we have 200 of these, so that makes it like 200, 103. This makes it 203, 4, 5, and 6. So 206 iterations versus we had 441 for the previous node. So if we just talk in terms of node execution, almost 50% performant this particular optimized workflow is as compared to the first one, which was unoptimized in nature. Maybe the time taken is not so much optimized until you use the batch API of Airtable, but you can clearly see the potential that at least it is not making 100 calls to fetch customer first from the Airtable and then process or update the record one by one for them. So just to summarize everything that we learned about optimization of workflows, the first tip that comes is you should always strive to reduce the unnecessary nodes which are there out there. Instead of repeating 5 nodes per item, you can loop once, reuse the logic inside a sub workflow or a code node. And both these concepts of sub workflow and code node we are going to very soon learn in this course, so stay tuned over there. You should always use batching features of APIs whenever available, and I already talked about exploring the Airtable's batch API if you are updating a lot of records in Airtable at once. Second tip is smart usage of loop node or merge node. Like we use the merge node to combine the enriched customer data with the original feedback, and you can use code or loop nodes for repeated patterns like we did emails or alerts that were being sent. We basically combined all of them and sent just one alert to our customer service team. And last thing, I'll call it again as to minimize the number of API calls as much as possible. Like always thinking of combining the data and then sending one request, or using the batch API like we have already discussed multiple times, or like we said that sending one alert or one email by combining all the other data using some sort of code node or merge node or aggregate node, so that you reduce the number of execution of such nodes like Gmail node or Amazon SES node, which is sending a notification, or Slack node or Discord node where you are sending instant notification to your users or customers. So in short, the optimization of workflow ensures that your workflows run fast, efficiently, and without any kind of unnecessary overhead. Now in the next lesson, we are going to shift gears, and from no code we are going to learn some concepts concepts of low code. We'll start with expressions, and then in the subsequent lesson we are going into detail of code node, and then I'm going to show you a classic example of downloading multiple Gmail attachments to your Google Drive with the help of code node. So stay tuned, and I'll see you in the next lesson of this course.